Welcome to Real Crusades History's Knights Templar series, Part 2, What Really Happened at Ascalon in 1153. In 1153, King Baldwin III of Jerusalem conquered the Egyptian city of Ascalon and added it to his kingdom. William of Tyre, made famous by his Chronicle of the Latin East, wrote something about the conduct of the Knights Templar at the Siege of Ascalon that has come to be notorious. According to William, after the Crusader army had besieged Ascalon for many months, the Templars broke through a breach in the wall. They would not allow anyone to follow them inside, since, according to William, they wanted all the booty for themselves. Ultimately, the Templars were massacred by the Muslims. William cites this as an example of why, in his opinion, the order had gotten out of control. But there are serious problems with William's account, most notably the fact that William was not present at the siege. In fact, he wasn't even in the Holy Land. So why did William record the Templars as behaving this way? And more importantly, is there any truth to the account? Helen Nicholson, one of the world's foremost experts on the Templars, helps clarify this issue. She points out that since Ascalon was an enormous city, during a general assault, soldiers not immediately next to the Templars would have been initially unaware that they'd breached the wall. Therefore, their accounts of events would have been based on what happened later, once the Templars had already been killed. Eyewitness accounts of the Siege of Ascalon do exist. The sources written by Muslims who were inside of Ascalon do not mention the death of the Templars, but two contemporary accounts from the Latin Christians do. The second of these accounts, written in the Duchy of Brabant, was from a man who himself participated in the operations at Ascalon. Both accounts agree that the Templars did make a breach in the wall, then proceeded to penetrate deep into the city very quickly. But none of the other Christians followed them inside. The streets of Ascalon were very narrow, and the Templars, despite making a courageous stand, were eventually overwhelmed by the large number of Muslim troops inside. Their bodies subsequently hung from the city walls as a mockery to the besieging Christian army. These two contemporary accounts give us far stronger evidence than William of Tyre, who wrote around 20 years later. Helen Nicholson further elaborates. What really happened at Ascalon was that the Templars succeeded in breaking into the city through the breach in the wall, but the other Christian attackers either did not realize that they had broken through or were reluctant to follow them into probable death. The Templars were killed, and the king was angry. His generals excused themselves by saying that the Templars had prevented them from following them into the city. And this was the account which they and their children gave to William of Tyre. In light of this, we might be quick to blame the other Christians for not hurrying to the aid of the Templars. However, we must keep in mind that the Templars were often quick to throw themselves into danger, perhaps on occasion, even some would argue to the point of rashness. They were notoriously unafraid of death, and in this situation, when they probably should have consulted with the rest of the army to make sure that everyone else was ready to enter the city, they instead plunged headlong into danger. That being said, there's no reason to accept William of Tyre's account of the Templars actually preventing other Christians from following them into Ascalon, especially out of greed. In fact, the Templars were most obviously not thinking about money or even their own lives. Shortly after the death of these Templars, Ascalon fell to the Crusaders. But their involvement in the siege tells us that their fearlessness could be both an asset and a liability, though usually it was the Templars themselves who paid the ultimate price. In this case, they would be some of the few Christians to suffer serious casualties at Ascalon, which was ultimately a sweeping victory for the Kingdom of Jerusalem over the Muslims.